that she's going to leave her video off for a while. She's closing up again this evening. So I imagine she'll be back with us later visually, but listening in the meantime. So Audra, do you think we're good to get started?
Yes, I'm ready. If all of you are.
Okay, let's we do have a quorum, but let's just make sure. I've got Shelley Butler here, Lorna Cummings here, Jill Delano, Beth Doan, Lisa Dresser, John French here, Nancy Harmon Jenkins. I didn't see her yet. Jim Hurd is here, Richard Householder is here, Peter Lindquist is here, Drew Lyman, I don't believe is here. Robin McIntosh, I'm here, Lisa Price. I have as being here. There she is. Wendy Rich is not going to be here this evening. Sophie Romana. I don't think Sophie's here yet.
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Sorry, didn't see you. Okay. Andy Scrivenich.
He'll be here in about probably 15 minutes.
Okay, Sarah, you're here. Tyler Smith.
Tyler's not here. He is coaching hockey. He'll be here at late.
Okay, so Tyler's not here yet. He can start voting when he gets here. Then Courtney Sukeforth, you're here. Mary Winchell is here, and Pamela Gleason I saw was here as well. So we do have a quorum. If everybody can, as I said, have the right names, have the videos on if you can. It's just helpful for everybody to see who's here, especially as it's being broadcast live for people out in the community to know who's here. And stay on mute unless you have something to say. You are always welcome to ask questions. That's what we're here for as a budget committee, is to understand what it is we're voting on. And also, I did hear from a couple of people and noticed as well last week, if we can keep some of the conversations to a dull roar over in the chat, that would be great. That kind of went off topic and gets a little distracting when there's side conversations. It's like being in a meeting and having two people talking in the back of the room. So if we can keep that down, that would be great. And I noticed, Audra, I don't know if you did on the agenda, there are a couple. One, it's where leisure services is tab 7, if you haven't noticed that already. And I think cemeteries is actually in tab 8 on page 33. Parks and Rec is page 28 and 30. So there were a couple of updates on the agenda from what I noticed. So I guess we're good to go. Audra, unless you have something to add?
Nope, that's pretty much it.
Okie doke.
All right.
You want to get it started then?
Certainly. So the first department that we'll be presenting tonight is the library, and Nikki Mayonis, the director, is here with a number of members of the Library Board of Trustees.
Thanks. So Pat Jones is going to start us off, and then I'll join in just a moment. So Pat.
Pat, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
We can't hear you. Pat, you need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. If you put your cursor in the upper right-hand corner of your little box with your picture on it and click on those 3 dots, you should be able, no, I don't see chat there. There you go.
There you
Now
go.
you're
I
on
got
mute.
it. Thank you. Sorry about that. I would just like to say a few words about the library and what a special place it has in our town. And if you ever approach our town from the water coming into the harbor, what you see at the head of the harbor is the beautiful library, the amphitheater, and Harbor Park. Our library, during these times of COVID, except for these times of COVID-19, is a meeting place for intellectual stimulus with all the varied programs it offers for all ages of different groups and interests. And Miss Amy is a treasure that our children, both young and old, enjoy. The artwork that we exhibit in the Picker Room expands our sensory horizons. The History Center preserves part of our town's history and helps people doing family genealogies. The Reading Room is a quiet place to read an assortment of newspapers and magazines or to do homework. And hopefully all these areas of the library will be open to everyone as we get vaccinated. Our library and its grounds are unique. It needs the town's support to maintain these special features that were created by Mary Louise Curtis Scott with architects, designers, and gardeners. Not only did she succeed in creating a building and grounds with a beautiful setting, but she created a place of learning and enrichment. Libraries help people of all ages find the joy of reading and learning and transferring that information into knowledge. Our library is in need of updating its heating and electrical systems, plus some insulation work. We are working with the town and Siemens to accomplish that. We also need to replace the green roof over the underground addition to the library in the near future. The green roof is nearing the end of its useful life. We ask for your help in keeping our library up to date with its systems and to be open to the people that we serve. I thank you.
So thank you. I'm going to do a little short presentation, and I'm going to share a screen here. Let's see if we can get this to work. There we go. Can everybody see that okay? All right, so I wanted to just talk briefly about the really unusual challenges that the library has been facing this year. I think it's been not only an unusual and challenging year, but really a very rewarding year. And we have spent a lot of time figuring out what our public needed to serve them right where they were last spring and last summer and last fall, and right where they still are. And that, of course, is at home. So we began by designing a curbside pickup service, especially for Camden. And this works here in our town really quite well. We do 60 to 70 curbside orders a day. We've done over 12,000 curbside orders since we began this service. It's very popular not only with families, but with people who just are not comfortable being out and about. So in addition, curbside happens every morning, Monday through Saturday. And in the afternoons, we are open to the public from 1 to 6. As you can see, everyone is masked, and we've got acrylic barriers and all of the rest. I think everybody knows this routine by now because it happens everywhere. In between curbside and regular afternoon service, we have been very robust in offering online programs. We do online story times nearly every day. And in addition to that, we do story times once or twice a week in the amphitheater when weather permits. And that includes even when there's snow on the ground. So that was children's programming. In terms of adult programs, we went virtual with multiple programs a day. And most of them are available via Zoom or other online platforms. These virtual programs have been so very successful that our numbers are actually larger than they were when we were offering just in-person programming. Really quite popular stuff. So as we practice what we call the resiliency, and that's a word that I think we're all very familiar with now, we are told that we become a really unexpected kind of bright spot in the middle of what has been a very dark and isolated year. At this particular moment in time, I really do think that our mission to read, connect, and discover is more important than it's ever been before. And we are happy to accept the challenge that was presented to us. So about 80% of Camden residents have a library card, and 2/3 of those people use that card regularly. As probably many of you know, it is also our honor to help maintain Harbor Park and the amphitheater. And both parks continue to play an important role in ensuring the resiliency of our community. We have found that many community members really value the parks, particularly at this time, as they meet with friends and clients and members of local organizations. Last fall, for instance, we had more than one business person use the amphitheater or the tables nearest the library as a kind of business office because their own office was closed and the Wi-Fi is really quite strong. So now on to our budget request. We have held the line, not because we don't have a need, but because we realize that these are truly extraordinary times and that there are many needs. Some of our tried and true fundraising activities, such as the outdoor book sales and the Harbor Arts Fairs, continue to be either postponed or canceled. The current fiscal year hasn't been easy. I won't say it has been, but we don't project that the next fiscal year will be much easier. And that's, of course, the year that we're discussing tonight. That said, the future certainly looks brighter than it did a year ago. And we hope to be back to a more normal business model later this calendar year. So currently, the town is funding us at the 49% level. The rest, the 51% here, is what is needed to sustain the library and Harbor Park and amphitheater. And it's earned in a variety of ways by library trustees, library volunteers, and library staff. I know that you realize that this 51% doesn't come easily. It comes, of course, from donations and business support and grants and book sales and wedding fees and postcard sales and photocopies, endowment, and on, and anything else that we can think of to add to the mix. In addition, many of our capital needs have been funded over the last 10 years with private support in the form of foundation grants, which support specific projects. The most recent example of that is perhaps the recent work on the Fons Garden staircase and railing that was completed last summer. And that was funded with a hefty grant as well as a private donation. We also found funds to help us repair the stone wall. You probably remember that happening last summer as well. The stone wall along Atlantic Avenue and then the new drainage system above the wall. So one last thing, as you may know, the library and the parks are town-owned properties, but managed by the library's Board of Trustees. We have recently embarked on an agreement with the town to share responsibility for some of the facility projects, as Pat mentioned, that Siemens contract, which specifically will help us with a new heating system, electrical, and insulation work. Over the next few years, our library will also be facing other major challenges. The most notable is that green roof membrane, which protects the underground Centennial Wing from all weather. It is nearing the end of its useful life and must be replaced before it fails. This, of course, will be a major undertaking and will require town financing, perhaps in the form of a bond issue. So thank you in advance for your help, and I am open to questions.
Unmute. Sophie, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Nikki, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm struck by the numbers, especially of all the digital and remote events that you held this year and how successful they are.
Yep.
And when I hear you say that you're hoping to reopen the library and have a business close to business as usual, I'm a bit worried because this indicates that you have an enormous opportunity continuing some of these programs. So what is your plan for 2021 in kind of, again, it's going to be unknown, but you have really good data on the success of the people logging in, and I was one of them. But
yeah, and that's a good question. And we, of course, are discussing that because we realize the same thing. We don't want to lose that virtual audience, but at the same time, we want to be able to offer programming on site. So at this point, again, it's very much under discussion, Sophie, but at this point, I believe that we will most likely go down the road of two specific models. We'll still continue with the virtual programming, particularly during the winter when the weather is not good and people don't want to come out at night, but that we will also offer programs on site, of course, when it's safe and all the rest. And that it will almost depend on the kind of program that it is. If it's a program that really needs to be hands-on, it will be here. But if it's more of a larger presentation, where somebody wants to do something like a PowerPoint or show a little movie clips with it and so forth, I think we will continue to do that online because that works quite well that way, and it would not be as effective if we did it here and online at the same time. So we're working our way through this, but I think we realize that we all know that the world has changed, and I think that we need to rethink just about everything we do and figure out what it is that truly best for the future, and pay attention to what we have learned along the way.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. One more quick one.
Yeah, a quick one. Do we know how much the green membrane is costing? Do we have an idea of this project?
It's in the neighborhood of $1 million. $1
million. Okay. Thank you.
John French, I think you were next.
Thank you. There
you go.
Okay. Okay. Great presentation. I think we need to take an opportunity this time. The library's always asked for $40,000. They're holding the line this year. I think this would be a good time to put the $40,000 back. I really do, because this is an opportunity that the library is going to help our students. There's a lot going on now with this COVID stuff. The kids need to have a chance to catch up, and this is exactly what the library is for. And I would like to at least present it to the board or the budget committee to consider putting in their $40,000 annual requests on top of what they have for this COVID. The $40,000 is going to be a minimum impact to the town budget. That's all I have to say, but I think they've done a wonderful job holding the line. I think we need to give them this opportunity and give them the extra money to get through the next year. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Nancy, I think Nancy Jenkins, you have a question? You're on mute.
Yeah, all right, I'm off now. First of all, congratulations. I think, in my experience, the library is the most important community institution in the town of Camden and for many other towns around, because the work you do is so important and it's so all embracing of every age group imaginable and every income group imaginable. It just draws people in, and I think it's done it even more so during this time. And I would second the motion that you should be considering doing more online kind of presentations. My experience has been really terrific. The difference between getting out of the house on a cold night in January and tramping down to the library and finding a parking place and getting in there to find that the picker room is full is not one people like to repeat. Whereas sitting in your living room and watching it and participating in it from your living room has been just terrific. So compliments on that. I'm not sure what the $40,000 is that John referred to, but I say let's give the library as much money as they can use, because we won't regret it and they'll put it to good use. The other question I'm going to ask you, though, is about this mysterious green membrane. When that was put in, which wasn't all that long ago, was it predicted that it would deteriorate as rapidly as this? And does it mean digging up the whole lawn to replace it?
Yeah. So my information on that is that the membrane has a life of somewhere between 20 to 30 years, most likely 25-ish. We also know from our research, and we've had a number of experts in to talk to us about it, that because it's been well taken care of, we are likely to go closer to 30, closer to the, but yes, they knew all along that it wasn't going to last, forever. And I guess if you look at it like a roof, a 30-year roof is, I guess, reasonably typical. Yes, the lawn itself will have to be dug up. It will be a major undertaking. And it's something that we need to plan rather than wait for it to fail. Because if it fails at a time when we can't dig it up, I don't even want to think about the disruption that would cause. But if we plan for it, it still will be a disruption, certainly, but it will be a planned disruption, and we will figure out how to work around it rather than, oh my gosh, my goodness, it's failing and we have to do something now.
Yeah.
And it's, January.
Good. Thank you. Pamela Gleason?
Yes, my first question was also about the life expectancy of the green membrane. So thank you for answering that question. I also had a question on a line item in the budget. There's a 4340 says that there's History Center income. And I just wondered how that is generated.
Yeah, that's actually mostly photocopies in that room. Occasionally, someone will ask us to reproduce a print on fine paper, and there's a small charge for that. You can see that doesn't bring in much money, and that's why. But it's just the little things that might come in and be paid for in the History Center.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
I question Audra and Nikki, I'm not sure who the question is for. How do we arrive at that $493,000? Can you explain a little bit for everybody who's new how it works between the town and the library? And I understand the 51% and all that, but just how do we arrive at these percentages and the numbers that we do from the town?
Well, I'll jump in, and then perhaps Audra has something to add. But traditionally, the library and the town have more or less split the cost of running the library and the upkeep of the parks in half, more or less. In the years that I've been here, it's always been in the 40s, somewhere between 45 and this 49%. And again, as far as I can tell, that's pretty much the way it's always been. Is there anything that you would add to that, Audra? Or
I'd say that the one difference this year, if you look closely at the library's budget, is that there was an agreement when the town took on the Siemens project and included the library in it, that the library's portion of the debt service would be split 50-50 between the town and the library. So if you look there's a $13,000 I don't know what you would call it, kind of like the library's almost crediting it to the town. And that's half the cost of the debt service for the library portion of the energy efficiency upgrades.
And I recall, I see, John, you have a question too. I recall a couple of years ago, there was an issue around putting some money into the reserves account or capital account going towards the library. Is that going to be part of this conversation?
Well, that money was put in into a reserve account and it was to do with the HVAC controls at the library. So when we were speaking with them about the Siemens project, we rolled that money into that project because of the fact that it would address the entire HVAC system.
Great, thank you. John, you had another question?
Well, I think Audra just answered it, because before all we was talking about was controls. Now we're talking about a new system and get it done properly. So I just want to say thank you for getting that, Audra, and the group getting that done.
Yeah, and thank you to the library for partnering with us. I think that, it allows us all to be consistent and on the same page across all the facilities in the town. So I think it's a really good, agreement between the two entities.
Yeah, and I would agree. We are very, very pleased at this kind of a partnership to help care for the building.
Thank you. Lorna, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering if the library, and I apologize if I missed this in the budget, if the library had been setting aside money every year to go towards that green roof, or if you're kind of looking like you really need all the money to come from a bond issue by the town, or how you were thinking and working on that.
You know, we are unable to put aside that kind of money every year. You know, we budget basically to break even, and not to make money or lose money, but to break even. And that's what we do. And it's what we've always done and what we need to do.
Thank you. Nancy Jenkins?
Yes, am I muted? No, I'm unmuted.
Nope.
I still,
Now you're muted, Nancy.
You just muted yourself, Nancy.
sorry, I
There you
can't
go.
know what it means up there. I'm
Hands in the
still
air.
curious about where John French's $40,000 came from, and is it in the budget? Is it something he said we should add it back to the budget? I just don't know. Maybe John could explain what it is.
Can I answer that, Robin?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that traditionally, I was the last 10 years I was on the board. That's been the request for the library to keep themselves solvent for the next year. And I know they're trying to keep their bottom line as best they can because of everything that's going on with COVID. But I do believe the importance of the library needs to be put out there, and I think we need to put back their regular 40,000 just to keep them moving forward. Does that help?
I think some of the confusion is that we're actually asking from the town for $492,000, not 40. So.
Right, but they ask for a $40,000 increase generally every year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and actually, our increases have ranged in the 20s, not the 40s. I'm happy to accept 40 though, John.
I know that, but it's been 40 a few times.
Yeah, it's but anyway, it's and that's what he's referring to is the increase over the years.
Thank you. Sophie, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. On the budget, the long sheet budget you shared, Nikki, in the building needs, there's a rather big decrease in your maintenance needs, and that maintenance line is very variable from one year to the other. And I'm just curious about, why you're only budgeting $25,000 this year versus 41 last year, where I'm just curious about this line.
Sure. So in a normal year, we actually do budget 25, and I raised the budget a year or two ago because I knew that we had some needs coming up. Right. I feel we can bring it down to 25 this year because of the Siemens project, which is a different budget line, if you will. But in a normal year, 25 is about what we would be spending.
Thank you. And one last thing, I was contacted by 2 members of the board who proactively asked if I had any questions on the budget or the annual report. And thank you so much for doing this, because I know last year we had a lot of questions on the budget. And thank you so much for being proactive, reaching out to us and including us in the discussion. That was very cool.
Thank you, Sophie.
Lisa, you had a question. I'm reading, you can tell.
Well, this is about the Siemens project, and my question is, and Nikki had mentioned about the heating needs, and I imagine that's covered, but I'm just wondering what impact that $13,000 has on the your budget for the year, because it's I see in the long sheet that it's been kept separate and coming from your $493,000 total.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly it does have an impact. I mean, we had to make it work. As I mentioned, our budget, we budget to break even, so we can't go in the hole for that $13,000. And in a year like this, I took some money from some of the electrical costs that were projected and the heating costs and so forth, hoping that that Siemens would their promise would come through and we could make it all work without too much of a hit to operations. So that's pretty much how I made this work for this year. And we'll see next year if in fact, after, you know, the lighting has been changed out and the heating system has been changed out and they put more insulation in, if in fact we are realizing the savings that they have projected, we will see in terms of energy costs. Does that answer your question, Lisa?
Yes, and I guess it maybe this line, you know, makes it even more interesting about what John suggested about the 40K, I suppose.
You know, the other thing that I would mention that you may or may not be aware of is we, in normal times, we have a staff of 10.5 full-time equivalent. And when COVID hit last spring, we had a couple of people resign because they had, you know, childcare issues, needed to be at home. And then we also, some of our part-timers were laid off. So currently we are at 8.5 FTE. So we are down 2 full-time positions. And so our plan is because our fundraising may still be impacted, as I was saying earlier this year, our plan is to hire those people back eventually, but do it slowly, because we are not sure exactly what's coming down the road. So that's also been factored into this this upcoming fiscal year budget, is a slower start to be sure that we can do our part and that our fundraising income is realized.
Thank you.
Jill, you have a question?
Yes, kind of on the note of staff, I happen to notice that your health insurance premiums as a percentage of the overall payroll is a lot less than, say, the administrative budget, the fire department, the police. It's only about 10, 11% versus 35% from the other budgets that we've looked at already. Are your is your staff eligible for the same kind of insurance, or how are you able to keep those numbers so low? I guess that's my question.
So this is only a guess, which Audra can confirm, but we offer health insurance to the employee only and not to their families. And I believe that the town does offer, and it might be a cost sharing kind of thing for the town employees, but that's how we do it. And I'm not proud to say that. I'm really not. It's what we have needed to do. But it does make, you know, that's not a good position for us to be in. And but as I said, it's what we do. It's what our practice has been for many years.
Does it affect hiring and ability to attract?
Yes, it does. Less hiring than people staying long term. You know, in the years that I've been here, I can remember at least 2 or 3 people who, you know, been with us for a while and then they've left, because most libraries in the state are municipal libraries. You know, we are not, as you know, and so they and most municipalities do offer health insurance to the entire family.
Yeah, that would be fair. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I guess just to, you know, that's of course a decision of the library board of directors, but you know, if a decision were made about health insurance, they would certainly be welcome to join the town's plan. So that is something that would be available to them if it were, you know, financially viable for the library.
Thank you. Are there any other budgetary questions or line item questions or a motion on this line item? John?
Could I make a motion?
You may.
I'd like to make a motion to include the 40,000 for their bill for 533,000. Would that be correct? If you add 40?
Yeah.
See if there's any, I think they deserve it this year. I mean, you know, especially with everything going on.
I second it.
A second.
Okay, there's a motion. Say that number again. I didn't do the math.
I would add the 40,000 to the 493, which would be 533, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Is that correct?
Okay, so that motion has been seconded. Are there any, is there any discussion?
Yep. So
Yes, Sophie?
in principle, I would like to support the motion, but I would like to table this vote until the library tells us how they would use the 40,000, how they would integrate it in the budget.
I can tell you right now, is that okay?
Sure.
We would hire a person back sooner. That's what we would do.
So that would go to personnel.
Oh, yes.
So,
yeah.
All right.
So
So
we
that
need-
means that it's going to be increasing the budget. It's going to be included in the budget going forward for FY23 as well. So that's what we're voting on today. It's not just
it's July to July. So yeah.
Right. But I mean, if you hire someone, put it in the budget, it's going to be included in next year. So, okay.
Right.
Thank you for that clarification.
Any other discussion on the motion for 533,000? Okay, I guess we are ready to vote then. We'll take a roll call vote. Shelley Butler?
Yes.
Yes. Lorna Cummings?
Yes.
Jill Delano?
Yes.
Beth Doan?
Yes.
Lisa Dresser?
Yes.
John French?
Yes.
Nancy Harmon Jenkins?
Yes.
Jim Hurd?
Yes.
Richard Householder?
Yes.
Peter Lindquist?
Yes.
Drew Lyman, are you here yet? No, Drew. Okay. Robin McIntosh, yes. Lisa Price?
Yes.
Sophie Romano?
Yes.
Andy Scrivenich? Is he here yet?
Yeah,
Sorry.
yes.
Oh, you are. Okay. I thought I'd seen you. Sarah Scrivenich?
Yes.
And has Tyler Smith come yet? No? No Tyler yet. Courtney Sukforth?
Yes.
Mary Winchell?
Yes.
And Pamela Gleason?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes, increasing the town manager's recommendation from 493 to 533. So there you have it, library.
It's a good day for the library.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. And it really does mean that we'll be able to get back on our feet sooner. And that's important.
Good, thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Audra, Harbor Department, and Mr. Pixley, whose picture has suddenly appeared.
So Steve, are you?
Audra, I have another question. So on the green roof membrane, who is in charge of doing the study, the pricing, the bidding, and when can we start planning this work?
So the library board of directors so far has done all the work around the green membrane, but we have talked about, as part of the phase 2 work that Siemens is doing for the town to kind of roll the green roof into that as well, because we found that they just have so many access to so many different experts when it comes to different, components of systems, that we just wouldn't otherwise be able to access. And I think a good example, this is very different, but at the Snow Bowl, the snowmaking, and having, an engineer come out and look at that and, come up with all kinds of different ideas on, what we could do to make it more cost effective and efficient. And I think that, that would be similarly beneficial for the library. So we're talking about, perhaps rolling that into the second round of the work that they're going to do for the town. And apologies, Nikki, because we haven't really talked in any detail about this, but, that's one thing that we're certainly hoping that, we can look at with them moving forward.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Looks like Nancy has a quick question. You're on mute, Nancy.
Okay.
Nancy, you're on mute. There you go.
Okay, all right. On that question, Audra, it's quite possible, it seems to me, that in the 30 years that have elapsed since the last installation of the green membrane, there might be the possibility of a more permanent structure that could be put in there that would last maybe half a century, and then we wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I think that everybody would hope if we're going to invest $1 million into a project like this, it would be something that would be, at least survive the life of the financing of that, that piece of infrastructure or building upgrade.
And the only thing I would add to that, Nancy, is that the investigation work that we have done so far, I understand that the product has in fact, improved tremendously, and that I think we can expect a longer life, but obviously it won't last forever either. But I have, as we've talked to several experts on this, and that's what I'm being told, is that the next round, it will be longer, but I don't know how long, and I certainly can't promise you anything.
As long as it lasts until the sea rises up to the edge of the door. Fine.
Richard,
Well, that's another conversation.
Richard Householder has a question.
Yes, I appreciate the expertise of Siemens and the experience that you have received from them in the past. But I would certainly think it would be beneficial to the town to put out competitive bids for some of the activity.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, everybody. Ready to move on to the harbor? I think so. Audra and Steve?
Steve, are you ready?
I think so. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
All right. I have a PowerPoint real quick that I did, and Jody said she was going to help me and put that up on the screen.
Hopefully here it comes.
There we are. Camden Harbor Department, here to maximize our greatest asset. There we got the old chart of the harbor. So what we are comprised of and what we manage for the town. There's my famous harbor clerk, in case you didn't know. Hard at work. For employees, we have a full-time salary harbor master. We got a full-time harbor clerk, who you just saw, and we have 3 part-time harbor staff. That's approximately from June 1st to November 1st. It's a receptionist, pump out boat operator, and a deputy harbor master. Camden Harbor has 540 permitted sites for vessels. We oversee the reassigning, the billing, and inspections of these sites. We manage 5 float systems. It's the public launch ramp, the overnight transient docks, the day sailor dock, the fisherman and small boat marina, and the Windjammer Library Park system. We build and maintain and manage the 30 memorial benches on the public wharf and direct and manage all waterborne traffic going in and out of the harbor. We also respond to any emergencies on the water and also lend a hand to Curtis Island caretakers when needed. The highlights for Camden last season, we had the inspections of all moorings and float mooring systems took place as usual during the pandemic summer. We had less vessels making reservations at the town docks, but the ones that did stayed longer than usual. So the dock revenues evened out and we met the season average. Only one Windjammer ran on a limited schedule, but all the day sailors save one ran with a restricted number of passengers. So it was a little odd last year, a little different, but everyone was really good about wearing a mask, and business went on as usual. Big plans for the upcoming season is just have a busy and safe boating season filled with fun and lots of visitors, hopefully. Ta-da! My first PowerPoint. Thanks, Jody.
Bravo.
And you guys have the, let's see, you're gonna make me put my glasses on here.
From page 26 in tab 7.
That's a big increase.
Yeah.
Oh.
Are you looking?
Steve, do you have anything to say on the numbers and the budget before we start questions?
If you're looking at my operating budget, you can see that the actuals for like say FY20, at the very bottom is 2,000 and 2,000. 2021, we budgeted 2013 650, and we're doing pretty well on that budget. So going ahead, you see that our budget is 215, 200 for 22 FY22. And if you have any particular questions, I can try to answer them.
Any questions for Steve? Peter Lindquist?
Thibault, explain the two lines of, one says general maintenance and one says equipment maintenance. Explain those two lines for me, please.
General maintenance is, I would say, more land-based things that we need to do, and equipment maintenance would be more towards the 3 vessels.
Give me a land-based thing that you have to repair.
That would be the wharf or aluminum ramps, docks, the actual wooden, the wooden docks, more so than the newer ones that we have. They're a little less cranky, but we still have a few wooden ones that we're about to get rid of. We're going to get new ones put in this spring, but that's the basic breakdown.
Oh, lots of questions. I think I saw John French's hand up next.
Hi, Robin. Thank you. Steve, I guess the question is, one, do you still get reimbursed by the state for the pump out boat?
Yes. Thanks, John. We do. We get 90% reimbursed by the state for the pump out boat.
And I guess my other question is, I see that there's a capital improvements project for replacing some of the floats, so there'd be an encapsulated styrofoam. Are we still charging the users so that half their money goes into a reserve account to help pay for this? Or has that gone away?
Well, I think you may maybe try to be a little more specific on that when you say the users, because obviously the fees that the users are incurring are going into general maintenance, which then is going towards that. Yeah. It's not specifically earmarked for that. It's just going into a general fund. And then when Audra and I and Jody will look at what we need to do, we'll say, okay, we need to do this next system is next for replacement. So let's go see what it's going to get some bids out, see what it's going to cost. And then we put that towards that new system.
Okay, because I remember that originally when we did the floats in the middle of the harbor, that we set up an account that half that money was going to be used for replacement costs down the road. So that reserve line is no longer there.
No, we don't earmark specifically for that. We just have all the money for the harbor goes into the general fund, and then when it's needed, we pull it back out.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know who was next, so I'm going to go from left to right on the top from my screen because that'll be the easiest way to go here. So Pam Gleason, if you're next.
Yes, I was wondering, Steve, if you could explain to me what the submerged lands lease is. And I noticed that line item for this year was a lot larger than in the actual budget.
Yeah, so the submerged land lease, when I first took over as harbor master, we didn't have that cost. But a few years back, the state decided that they are going to charge municipalities for the use. If you have an infrastructure floating dock system that's over so many square feet of their water or their land, basically, which the water happens to be on, then they're going to charge municipalities for that. So we had folks come in and say, here's what you have for a dock system, and here's what we're going to charge you. I don't know the date that started, but it slowly increases, from time to time.
Thank you.
So I'm kind of speculating as to why the actuals are higher than the what's budgeted and what the actuals in the past have been. I'm thinking that perhaps some of our submerged land, or sorry, there's an agreement with the yacht club as well. So I'm thinking that maybe that got rolled into this and we need to separate those things. So we'll look into that and see if that's the reason behind it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you report back on that, Audra,
Yep,
for the
absolutely.
next time?
Yes.
Lisa Dresser?
Hi, thank you. That the submerged land lease was part of my question. And then my other question is the other line, the equipment maintenance, that's significantly higher now than what was budgeted for. Was that some sort of a one-off thing? Because I noticed you're only asking for 9,000 this year, which is not even close to what you've already spent.
Yeah. What happens is I buy, like, let's say 2 barrels of chain, and it's got to be long link American chain because of the ordinance, for the small boat marina. We can't drive pilings up that far. Pilings are better because we have dolphin systems for the overnight dock system, and it's much better as far as your yearly cost because you don't have the to replace bottom chain or the shackles or top chain. Unfortunately, for the small boat marina and the fisherman area, there's ledge there, so we can't drive pilings. So there's 9 chains and 9 blocks that hold that system in place so it doesn't move. And I'll go and if I run, I keep the chain, these big barrels of chain that I buy from Hamilton Marine, and I leave them stored at the Boynton building at the highway. And then when I come down to the end, I've got to go buy a new barrel. And I think that year is when I actually had to buy 2 or 3 actually new barrels of chain. So that's why it's probably spiked up a little more than usual.
Thank you. Lisa, that was you, correct? So Lorna, you next.
Thanks. A lot of my questions were answered already, but I did have one last question that just stuck out for me a little bit, was that you had trash removal. It's been 2,000 has been budgeted every year and nothing is removed from the line, like nothing's spent. So I didn't know if that was like how that worked, if it was to do with the parks department or, you know, some way you guys work together, or what that was all about.
Yeah. Interesting thing about that is a little while ago, we used to have a dumpster that was right next to the waterfalls. It took the last 2 parking spots up. And that was a dumpster that visiting boats, boats that spent overnight could use. And that was a kind of like what they got if they're spending the money to be at our dock system. What happened was about 2 or 3 years ago, I was contacted by Stuart Smith, and he said, well, we would love to be able to put a dumpster behind the restrooms, kind of where the wastewater people use. There's a couple steps to get into the back. And we want to know if we could put a dumpster on town property. If you let us, then we'll pay for not just getting it taken care of. You know, once a week we would have the dumpster, or twice a week we used to have the dumpster come and taken care of. But he said, I'll have it every day, so because then I can put stuff in it, and you can put as much as you want it as well. So we pretty much don't know how long this free ride is going to last. It's been working great so far. The fishermen get to use it, and so far we've had a few problems with some people abusing it. But so we kind of are like, well, we're going to keep that $2,000 ready just in case something happens and we need it. But we haven't have to use it. We're kind of getting a free ride, so to speak, for that.
All right, thank you.
Nancy Jenkins, you're next.
Okay, am I muted?
You are, we can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm still troubled by the submerged lands lease, which jumped by about $5,000 from the budget in FY21 to the actual, and FY21 isn't finished yet. And the jump in equipment maintenance was even more. It was $6,000 FY21 budget to FY21 actual. And I just don't understand why the chain, I get the chain, but I'm not quite sure if that accounts for that. Presumably the chain is in equipment, not in submerged lands lease. The state decides the submerged lands lease, what we owe for it, and we just go along and pay it, or what?
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
go ahead, Roger.
oh, I was going to say, yeah. So they calculate what the cost is based on the amount of, docks and piers that we have over the water, because the state land is anything that's under the water. So it's, harbor, lakes, ponds, all of that is considered state land. And so, they calculate what we owe based on how much, we've built over it. And like I said before, I'm speculating because the yacht club also pays a submerged land lease. And because of the fact that that property is owned by the town, it's the bill is sent to us and then it's sent on to the yacht club. So I'm speculating. And like I said, I'll follow up and let you all know that there's a possibility that just got paid and it wasn't passed on to the yacht club. So I'm going to look and see if that's the reason why there's such a discrepancy between what we budgeted and what the actuals are.
And is it just the yacht club or also Lehman Morris?
Just the yacht club, because that property is technically owned by the town.
I see.
Quick question. Do we pay any kind of sales tax on the rentals? Is there any kind of tax on the actual, what we charge boats that come through? Is it a double dip by the state, or is that basically their way of taking their piece of our income from that submerged land?
Just because we're tax exempt. So it's just the submerged land lease is their way of getting their
sharing. Thank you. Nancy Jenkins, you have another question?
No, the other one is about equipment maintenance. We've dealt with submerged lands, and now the equipment maintenance, $6,000 more spent in this financial year than was budgeted for, and yet the budget for this year is only for the next year is only $9,000. So I guess what puzzles me is if we had that big of an increase in FY21, why isn't it reflected in the budget figures for FY22, the proposed budget for FY22? I'm puzzled by that.
Well, once again, there's certain things like the Steamboat Landing has 9 roller systems which keep the heavy docks attached to the dolphin pilings. They all were at the end of their life, so I had to renew them. So all at once last year. So and same with the chain. I had to buy 2 barrels of chain for the finger float system and fisherman area. So it just happened to go that it was the time to replace that. So it was a kind of a heavy year for that. But they last for about 5 years. The roller systems and the bottom chain and the top chain usually last for about 5-6 years. So that's why. They're long pieces that you use, but they last for a while. So that's probably, I think most likely that's why you see the fact that I'm not going to need to buy new that again for the next another 4 years.
Steve, I just also want to add, excuse me, there was an expense that may have been unprepared for as well. We had a pedestal repair also back in July for 4.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we had a fisherman accidentally run into an electric pedestal, and that was quite expensive to fix. Yeah.
So you don't foresee that happening in the next financial year, which is why that figure.
Correct. And as far as the pedestals, I had Billy Glover make these big steel aluminum brackets that almost look like a roll bar, so boats can't break the pedestals as easy. So yeah, hopefully that we'll have captains that can navigate a little bit gentler as they come to the dock.
Is that something, Steve, that we know we can budget in the future, that we know in 5 years we're going to have that chain expense again, so it would show up in the budget rather than showing up as something that came in over what we had budgeted?
It's possible. I remember having this conversation about 9 years ago with Roberta about, should I have an actual line item for rollers or chain? And I remember we talked about it. It was like, well, no, we'll deal with it. Every 5 years you have to do it and see how it goes. But we could talk about it.
But
thank you. Sophie, you have a question?
Yeah, no, my question is along your same lines, Robin. It's like every year there's something that's 5 years old that breaks, right? Or that needs to be replaced. So I was wondering if you maintain a schedule of, the life expectancy of the equipment we buy, so we can have a bit more of a forecast. So just a little bit more a question along the lines of Robin's, can we have a better forecast of, because we know how long those chains last pretty much, right? Now you have at least 10 years of data, so we could easily forecast it.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, chains depending on what the kind of weather you had. Makes a difference. But, I obviously, I trust my inspectors when they go down and they look at it and they say it's, but yeah, usually the inspector will say, chain looks pretty good. And then they could say, we could try to get a read like, yeah, 2 years, we're probably gonna need to replace this and then get ready for it.
Yeah. No, I know. I own chain in the harbor too. So I know how hard it is to forecast, but maybe if we had like a table with all the different chains and pieces, and just to help forecast better and see the life expectancy of those things. Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
Sarah, you have a question?
No, it's actually Andy. I just was, I'm just gonna echo Sophie and say it sounds like it'd be a good idea to have either a separate fund for these, maintenance issues that are every 5 years, but they leapfrog each other, that they should have a line item and have their own, line item to kind of keep track of that. So we don't have the surprises. So.
Thank you. Audra, are we going to, I realize it's not part of the budget, but harbor income and capital expenses and all that. Do you want to,
I wanted to, because I think that'll sort of answer that question as well, that comment. But I guess first, if everyone can turn to their green page, and you look for charges for services, income from departments, starting on line 90-17-02.
01.
Oh, sorry. Yes. 01. Thank you, Steve.
Has everybody had time to get there?
Here it is.
The green page in tab 1.
What's the line?
Kind of 3/4 of the way down the page. It's 90-17-01 harbor permits.
Yep.
And down to -11. So everything in that block is all the income from the different harbor services. So the wait list, the dockage, permits for the floats and moorings, and then, floats from like the day sailor windjammer fleet and fishermen.
Jody, do you have a total on that? So we're not sitting here trying to do the math in our head.
262,500.
Thank you. Any questions on that revenue?
And just so you all have an idea, so for any fees that the town charges every year around January, the select board adopts a fee schedule for all town departments that have fees for services. And that's just part of the budget process in helping us better forecast. And there were no significant changes to harbor fees this year. There was I think a little bit of a change around the dinghy permits in trying to have some stratification between the different types of, vessels that are there. But other than that, it was pretty much flat for the harbor fees.
And Audra, can you clarify that revenue goes into the general fund, doesn't it, versus going specifically to any one thing?
Yep. So it goes into the general fund, but then if you turn to, and I'll give everyone some time before I rattle it off, tab 9 and page, I believe it's 36. Yep, tab 9, page 36 for capital reserves. You'll see that there's a number of reserves for the harbor. So I think Jody gave you all the balances of these as well. For the ones that are listed here in the book, we've given the balances of them for you to look at. So there's a harbor dredging reserve, harbor projects reserve, and that's sort of the reserve that would traditionally take care of a lot of the, the different expenses that Steve was talking about, like the chains and, the docks when they need to be replaced or fixed, and that sort of infrastructure. So a lot of, given there was the ordinance change with the unencapsulated polystyrene, and we have to have that all completed by FY23, we've really been focusing on using those funds to try and help pay for the cost of replacing the entire float system that needs to be replaced, where we have, unencapsulated polystyrene currently. So that's really been the focus of that reserve fund, and trying to stabilize the impact of the expense associated with upgrading that, the floats and that infrastructure.
Does the public landing fall under this for the harbor, or is that under parks? The public landing reserve here, line 4459.
Yep. The public landing reserve, that is specifically for the wharf, and
okay.
The goal, and I think, the goal with that funding is, it's certainly, it would take us forever to save up enough money to make the improvements to the public landing, or redevelop the public landing in the way that it needs to be redeveloped, particularly with, the sort of issues that we're going to be facing with sea level rise. So the way that I think we need to look at that reserve account is for planning and engineering work that still needs to be done. There's a lot that's been done, but there's a lot of, specific engineering and design work that the town is going to need to move forward on to get to a point where we have something ready for, to move forward for everyone to make a decision on in terms of what we're going to do to redevelop the public landing.
Great, thank you. And Lorna, you have a question? She's unmuting herself. There you go.
So sorry, guys. I just clicked on something on my screen. I couldn't see anyone for a minute. While we're on the capital reserves, I was wondering why we weren't adding to the harbor dredging this year.
The reason I didn't add any to that this year is that I don't foresee that happening for a little while, and we've built up, it's at a fairly good place. So I think that when we get to the point where we're closer to, needing to look at dredging the harbor, we'll be able to continue adding to that. But I just didn't see it as something that was, immediate enough of a need, or I would say like even in the medium term where, we needed to put money into that this year. So it was just sort of one of those trade-offs for funding other reserves.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, Audra and I spoke. We've been lucky in the fact that in the spring times, the rainfalls that we've had haven't had exceeded a lot of rain at one time. The issue, if we have a spring or a series of 3-4 springs where we have big amounts of rainfall, the McGunnicook River, you have 12 inches coming over that waterfall, and that brings a lot of sediment with it exponentially. And what I notice is on those types of decades, or if you have a lot of those in succession, you get a big buildup of sediment where we do our private dredge, under the Fishman area. But we've been lucky in the fact that we haven't had that much of a buildup under there. It's still pretty deep, that water. I monitor that with my deputies. We have a chain and we measure to see what it is at astronomical low tides. So we're doing better than usually. Obviously that can change, but so far we're doing good. I think that led to the fact that we decided not to put in for that this year.
Any other questions with there's a lot there. There's reserve, operating, and income. John French?
Well, I don't have anything about the reserve. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Could
No,
I?
it's okay.
I just had a question to Steve. I recall the last time we dredged, then we had to pick up all them blocks for the moorings, that the staples were pretty bad shape. Are they monitoring the staples when they're doing the inspections?
Oh, okay, John. Yeah, you're, well, I just want to you're mixing the dredges. So we got a private dredge, which we pay for. That's the area that's in the, not in the federal project zone, next to the waterfall where this, under the small boat marina and fisherman area. John now is talking about the federal dredge, which we did the second winter I was harbor master. And yeah, John, you're correct. When we did that, that's every 50 years we do that. So it was 20. So we won't do that for another 29 years. I'm not going to be a harbor master again, hopefully. But yeah, you're correct, John, in that we did have a lot of staples that were bad, and we have a completely new way of inspecting and a new criteria, which I think you helped to institute way back. That's probably about 15 years ago. So yes, they are checking staple size, shackles, bottom chain, and everything when they do their inspections.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
So do we have a motion on this? We want to do, I want to make sure people's questions are answered, but also we have a lot of ground to cover tonight. So Peter?
I move that we accept the 215,200 requested.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, it's seconded a bunch of times. Any
Next one.
discussion on that? We'll go ahead with a vote then. So here we go. Shelley Butler.
Yes.
Lorna Cummings.
Yes.
Jill Delano.
Yes.
Beth Doan.
Yes.
Lisa Dresser.
Yes.
John French.
Yes.
Nancy Harmon Jenkins.
Yes.
Jim Hurd.
Yes.
Richard Householder.
Yes.
Peter Lindquist.
Yes.
Drew Lyman, are you here? Nope. Robin McIntosh, me, yes. Lisa Price?
Yes.
Sophie Romano?
Yes.
Andy Scrivenich?
Yes.
Sarah Scrivenich?
Yes.
Tyler Smith, are you here yet? Nope. Courtney Sukforth?
Yes.
Mary Winchell?
Yes.
And Pamela Gleason?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Hey, thank you.
Audra, do you want to introduce Parks and Rec? I assume Beth is here somewhere. And
Yeah.
Holly, there we go.
Beth Ward, our Parks and Recreation Director, and Holly Anderson, our Assistant Director, are here to present their budgets.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay.
We can. That's page 28, everybody.
Yep. I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share with everyone. All right. So our department overview, the Camden Parks Recreation Department is responsible for more than 700 acres of town property and several public facilities. Camden summer recreation camps are run by the Penobscot Bay YMCA out of the Snow Bowl, which with recreation staff and town support. Recreation staff partners with organizations to put on the Maine Lobster Ride event, Ragged Mountain Scuttle, and the Trail Fest. We also run the Camden Windjammer Festival on Labor Day weekend. We participate in the Maine Healthy Beaches program from June through September. This map is an overview of the town properties that the Parks and Recreation Department is responsible for managing and or maintaining. There are 28 in total. Oh, by the way, if anyone would like to see these slides, please email me and I'll send you a copy of this PowerPoint. bward@camdenmaine.gov.
Oh, Beth, I'll also post it on the website under the Budget Center.
Okay, great. Several of the town's properties require daily attention for facility cleaning and trash collection, while most of the properties we mow are done weekly. These include the Village Green, Harbor Park, the Amphitheater, Lake Beach Park, and out at the Snow Bowl. The bulk of the properties are tended to as needed and on occasion, as well as for spring and fall cleanup tasks. The next series of slides list town parks and public spaces and include in bold current needs. Additional needs that may be listed for each are for the future, when funding and the public interest comes to the forefront. For the first group of signs, these parks were a priority in terms of signage needs, and their new signs will be installed this summer. There are 6 new signs ready to be installed when the weather is favorable. Shirt Tail Point priorities include beach erosion and water runoff control projects, working to control feces left by geese and stabilize the benches. Seabright Dam area currently needs include installing the new sign at the path entrance and create a defined parking area there. At Barrett's Cove, we need to replace missing boulders at the edge of the parking lot, develop a plan to improve parking lot drainage, and increase the frequency of our shoreline grooming work, among other things. The benches at the Village Green need to be repainted. On Curtis Island, the wooden walkway needs to be repaired. Down the road, we'd like to add a dock for easier public access to the island, replace the picnic table, and possibly promote more usage for small public gatherings such as destination weddings. Hudson Park needs some more signage and maintenance. The Bog Bridge boat launch has several needs before summer gets into full swing, mostly having to do with improving messaging about where to park and for how long, where to launch, where to enter and exit, etc. The kiosk at Route 52 boat launch needs to be replaced and include a map and lake information. Activity signage needs to be improved. Downtown at the harbor, the stone wall at the head of the harbor needs long-term repair work. The Maiden Cliff Trail sign needs to be replaced so it's larger and repositioned so people can see it better. We also need to rebuild some of the trail bridges, and we also may need to reroute some of the trail due to erosion. Downtown at the public landing, we hope to eventually add showers and possibly laundry service to the public restroom building for transient boat users. Lake Beach, which is sporting a new swing set that we installed last summer, needs a plan to replace a large aging ailing tree. We also need to replace picnic tables on site and repair gutters on the public restroom building. Finally, there is a small children's amphitheater that needs some erosion work. Beacon Street Overlook needs improvement to curbside access to the trail down to the water, and a wood bench needs to be repaired. Mount Batty Trailhead has no current needs. Land's End, there are some trees that need to be removed. Okay, so for staff and roles, this slide details staff and their roles. This is a breakdown showing the number of regular full-time, seasonal, full-time, and part-time employees for Parks and Recreation and Cemetery. While you review the details, I can tell you that there are 2 full-time admin employees for 6 months, 4 full-time park employees for 7 months, 1 full-time custodian for 7 months, and 1 full-time cemetery employee for 7 months. We also employ 2 seasonal full-time park employees and 1 seasonal full-time cemetery employee and 1 part-time custodian for all 6 months. The rest are shared with this Snow Bowl budget. 2021 highlights. Highlights would have been more to do with normal parks and recreation accomplishments and news, but last spring's pandemic caused us to pivot to keep staff safe while maintaining the properties and tending to normal tasks around town. Early on, we trained our staff to apply our brown-tail moth treatment as needed. While staff continued mowing and maintaining of town properties, admin staff helped with developing and producing COVID-related public information signage and messaging for downtown. Due to increased outdoor dining downtown last summer and fall, we purchased and installed new picnic tables in a variety of high-traffic areas. We also worked with the Penn Bay YMCA to hold a safe pod-style summer camp for area youth. Due to state restrictions, campers had to remain at home base, which was at the Snow Bowl. We worked with the Opera House staff and a handful of their board members in late August to hold a successful COVID-safe Summer Sounds concert outside at the Snow Bowl. And we continued with Healthy Maine Beach's weekly water monitoring program during the pandemic. And finally, we implemented an online waiver program that can be used for a variety of needs. There were a handful of projects completed during FY21. They included installation of new swing set at Lake Beach, temporary repairs to Harbor Park and the adjacent Inner Harbor seawall. That's a before and after. Repaved the Snow Bowl access road and replaced the culvert beneath it. And it's working really nicely. Acquire, unassemble, and relocate the former Teen Center skate park to its new temporary location. And our budget details and changes. There's a slight increase in our wages and benefits. There is going to be a reduction due to the new contract with the Penn Bay YMCA, in which the YMCA will reimburse the town for bus driver wages and fuel. And there is a slight increase in our equipment maintenance line because we are purchasing a side-by-side ATV, which will also be funded 50% from the Snow Bowl. And then we're on to the cemetery. The cemetery budget is ultimately reimbursed to the town by the Cemetery Association, and there are no, other than slight increase in wages and benefits, there are no changes. Planned projects for FY22. Shirt Tail Park Improvement was a CIP that I wish that would have gotten into this, your printed budget, but it didn't. And I'd like to request that it get put back for a project to stabilize the riverbank from erosion and relocation of the parking lot for safety. And then like we said earlier, we're going to erect and replace signage in various locations, among all of the other projects we have going on. That's it. Any questions?
I'll just point out that the cemetery's budget is in tab 8 on page 33. It shows up as page 30 in this section on our agenda. So if everybody was able to see that, they're in there as two separate budgets. Any questions for Beth from anyone?
Oh, I thought I would explain something first because Lorna asked me a question prior to the meeting, and I thought it was a really good one. And if she had that as a question, that there are other people that were probably curious about the same thing. So on page 28, it has the recreation budget. And so a good way of sort of looking at that budget and everything it entails is that it includes Beth and Holly's positions for 6 months of the year. The other 6 months of the year, their wages and benefits are contained within the Snow Bowl budget. And then all of the other expenses that you see on this page have, with the exception of a couple, more or less have to do with the Snow Bowl as the Ragged Mountain recreation area. So the Snow Bowl and all the other months of the year when it's not functioning is a ski hill. So the sort of expenses outside of that are like the lake warden and the summer camp but everything else in terms of maintenance and electricity and all those expenses have to do with, the lodge and the grounds at the Ragged Mountain Recreation Area. So that's what that budget is addressing. And then the budget on page 30 for all of the other parks and recreation areas within the town. And the staff who maintain them, and their wages and benefits are for 7 months of the year. And then the other 5 months of the year for the full-time people, their wages and benefits are also within the snowball budget.
So we have those two budgets showing here on page 28 and page 30. So one was for 171,250 and 286,610. Sophie, you have a question?
I do. Beth, I'm struggling to understand the summer program contract. In FY21, the budget was 11,000, and in FY22, it's 32,000.
Yeah, so the 11,000 was not the original budget. That was cut due to COVID uncertainties. The select board voted to decrease that, knowing that we wouldn't have as many campers attending camp. And in FY20, we had budgeted 23,000, but we landed at 31,000. Yeah, that was the first year we entered into a new contract with the Y, which we have negotiated with them this year, a different contract, and which I think we were going to suggest that we decrease that 32,000 to 24,000. Okay, so there's going to be an adjustment made. So it's not going to be 32 in the budget, but 24. That's correct. Okay, and
so can I just ask, what is the new bottom line on that, Jody or Audra?
I have the 148,250.
148,250. Okay.
So almost flat now.
Yeah.
And so what's the contract with the Y? I don't understand how it works. Sorry, can you, I don't know.
Yes, we've been contracting with the Y since I think 2008. Basically, we pay them a flat rate per Camden resident child that comes to camp. And they run it for us with the idea that we will pay them that rate for every child from Camden. And they also bring in children from other areas that they collect income from.
I see. Thank you.
Like a historic perspective, the town of Camden used to run a summer recreation program with town of Camden staff. And then I think, like Beth was saying, in 2008, the town started contracting with the Y to run the summer rec program. And part of the agreement was that the town subsidizes the cost of Camden children participating in that program so that we can hold spots open for Camden residents.
But aren't those spots also covered by the Y's fundraising?
They do offer some scholarship, which the town doesn't. We have a flexible pay scale, which is a very reasonable rate to send your child to camp. But they do fundraising for scholarshiping, which Camden children can apply for, but they get a better rate by going through us.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Lorna, you have a question?
Hi, yeah, thank you. So I was wondering about you cover so much ground with what you need to take care of. It's really impressive, and I think it's really amazing what you do with the amount of money you have.
Thank you.
You really do a great job. But I was wondering about the Lake Stewart. Is that to do with like monitoring, for boating accidents and things like that? Or is that the water quality testing, or what is that?
That is Dale, and he's, I guess he's considered a Lake Stewart now. It used to be Lake Patrol, I believe. When
so he's officially Inland Harbor Master now.
Oh, okay, we got a new name. But Ken Bailey years and years ago used to be the Lake Patrol or Inland Harbor Master. He is out there to educate
He also, I believe, gets paid through the watershed, the rest of his wages. But he's on the water regularly, and he's educating and asking people to follow the rules and stuff like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, did you have a question? You're on mute.
Oh, all right.
You got it.
Firstly, I'd like to say it was Camp Homer, if you don't remember. Today.
Way
And
back.
it was a great, but it's still a great thing for the kids. They enjoy it. But I just had a question, Beth. This 50,000 for the work at Shirt Tail, is that part of the ongoing program that's been? I don't recall when I was still on the board, there was a discussion about doing some different things for Shirt Tail with the property up there. Is that all part of that discussion that leads up to it?
Yes, because remember when the town decided to put the sidewalk in to Shirt Tail?
Yes.
That was when I think you were on the board, and you charged us with coming up with a new plan to rejuvenate that park and
Correct.
make it more attractive to get people to go there. Well, we're trying to finally do it, John. We would like to redesign the parking area so it's more safe for the kids to have more park area down by the water.
That's good.
Yes.
Thank you, Beth.
Yeah.
Audra and Beth, would you like to do what we did with the harbor in looking at revenue and capital expenses as well, so that we have a full picture before going into making motions and asking more questions?
Please, because I think we're going to need to make a corresponding adjustment to the revenue. You know, now that we've made that change to the contract amount.
Audra, can you just quickly reiterate how much it is we're going to be changing the summer program contract to?
So it is currently, it was in the budget is 32,000, and I believe that it would be 20. Is it 24, Beth?
That'll bring that bottom line to 163,250.
And then we will be reimbursed, Jody, whatever we pay the bus drivers out of the program wages. So it may not be the full 15, but we will be reimbursed something out of that line.
What was the 148,250 that Beth said before? Was that?
I think that included the 15,000 for program wages.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Jody, if you do the math?
The whole bottom line is 163,250, and that's including the program wages.
But if you put the 15 back in because we're being reimbursed.
The 15 was already in there under program wages.
I know, but the Y is going to be paying us the bus driver's wages.
Okay, so we would put that in on the revenue side, so the net would be, right. Yes, I'm sorry, yep.
So is that going, do you want us to go to the green page then? So that's back to tab 1.
Yes, so the corresponding revenue will be in the summer recreation revenue line,
which is 90-15-06.
Correct. And I put 40,000 as a placeholder in there because we were still working out the contract, and I knew that we always end up being about, it costs the town, the net cost to the town for this program is about $10,000 when you work out the revenue we receive from the program and the expense to the town in the contract cost, as well as the program wages, which is the cost of the bus driver. So given that change, we would reduce that to about 32,000. So that would be the reimbursement for the bus driver, which is 15,000, plus the revenue that we'd receive from
campers,
enrollment of campers. Yeah.
And then do you want to look at reserve? Are there questions on that for the,
I think
John, do you have a question?
Well, I guess my question was on this other matter. when Beth brought up the 50, where would that end up if we consider that, Audra? Would that be in capital or would that be in their regular budget?
That would be in the capital improvement program.
Okay.
And
Is that a hard? Is that a good number, the 50,000? Is that? Audra?
Oh,
sorry, I'm just having a look.
Just looking.
John, to answer your question, we worked with Jeff Senders, and he engineered the erosion control of the riverbank, and he came up with a drawing for the new parking. And his estimate for going out to bid, he thought it would be about 50,000. So that's where that number came from.
Well, we've been needing to do it.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, John.
Well, I was going to say, this has been needed to be done for a long time. And as Steve Pixley pointed out, you know, with the sediment that comes down the Gunnock River, that's just one more thing we can stop the sediment getting in the river to head into the bay, into the harbor. So we're going to save money in the end. Correct? You following me?
I'm following you.
All right. I'm getting the deer in the headlight look from Robin. I didn't know.
Not at all. No, I'm thinking that's a very big picture of you, John.
Well, you know, I'm trying to be, you know, look at the whole picture here.
I know, absolutely. That's what we should be doing. So Audra, do you want to go to the reserves and capital expenses, and then we can go back to the actual operating budget?
Yeah, so for capital reserves, I believe this was Beth did request some reserve funding for the, I believe it was the Snow Bowl.
What page are we going to?
Oh, sorry, apologies, tab 9, page 36. So Beth requested reserve funds be allocated towards parks and open space, Snow Bowl. So the parks and open space, I think she requested 15,000, and the Snow Bowl 25,000. I didn't propose adding additional reserve funds to either of those. And it was, again, another one of those trade-offs. So we have currently about 34,000 in the Parks and Open Space Reserve. So if there was any, you know, sort of immediate needs this season, I thought that would, you know, that would cover that. So that's, but again, it's just another one of those sorts of trade-offs for, you know, trying to figure out what reserves needed additional funding the most. And then in terms of the Snow Bowl, we've got a pretty good reserve balance, and also we're going to sort of end this year in a pretty good position. So I think Beth would agree with me that we don't need to add any additional funds to that particular reserve. So that's the, you know, all the reserves that have to do with the Parks Department. And then in terms of the CIP, I think it was an accident that Beth's request for 50,000 for Shirt Tail Park improvements didn't show up on the department head side. But I guess even if it had, I probably wouldn't have included it because, again, it's another one of those sorts of trade-offs to, you know, try and keep things as even as possible this year.
So should we make a note of that at this point in the capital budget? And then when we get to that, because we don't vote on that tonight anyway. And so as we get further into the process, we can take a look at some of these suggestions.
Yep, absolutely. I think
what page is capital on?
So that is 37.
37, okay.
Is it okay if I ask another quick question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Just about the shirt tail, is that the kind of thing you would maybe be able to find grant money if you had time to match it? And how would that be?
Yeah. Yes, Lorna, absolutely. Every year there's a land, water, and conservation grant that we usually apply for along with Coastal Mountain Land Trust as a partner. And this year we're putting in for a couple of different projects here at the Ragged Mountain Recreation Area. And we didn't feel like we should take away from those projects that we're going after that grant for with a shirt tail grant. But we absolutely, if we want to put this on hold and go after a land water conservation grant for next year and do it next year, we can absolutely probably get a grant for that.
Thank you.
And I've got a pitch that I want to make to Beth and the Public Works Director when it comes to shirt tail. I think it would be a good candidate for a pilot project with permeable pavement for some of the erosion control and parking lot issues. So I want to look at that a little bit more, because that's something that we're just starting to really try to see if it's going to be beneficial. So maybe that could be sort of bundled into another project we're hoping to do that with. So I'll make my pitch to Beth and Dave St. Laurent, and we'll let you know how that goes, because that might convince the rest of you to hold off another year.
Audra, just as far as budget impact goes, if, for instance, Beth found the perfect $50,000 grant to go after and applied and got it this year, if it's in the budget or not in the budget, would that impact being able to utilize a grant like that?
So for pretty much any sort of grant program, there's always a match requirement. So say, Beth was able to find, some grant program that would grant up to, who knows, $50,000. We could certainly use the Parks and Rec Reserve Fund as match and then go after a grant. So
you would be able to expend that money.
Yeah. So, I mean, the select board, of course, would have to approve it, but I think that, we could make a good case if we found something and the timing was right.
Great. Thank you. Lisa, do you have a question? Were you raising your hand, Lisa Price? Okay. All right. John French is raising his hand.
I have a comment that I know the board's going to hate me for.
Okay.
Since they got $166,000 sitting in their contingency, and a lot of that was for COVID impact, why not bust out some of that money and pay for some of these projects that are COVID related, and then you could use the town money to pay for some of these projects and not impact the budget. Just saying. Correct?
Thank you.
Yes, just saying it.
I'm assuming that was heard. So
we've got a lot of planning projects I wanted to talk to you all about next week that I think would be good candidates for that I didn't include in the budget, and it kind of answers the question about some of the goals and priorities and how we're moving them forward, and why you might not see them in the budget, but there's still things that we want to do next year. We're very much eyeing that $160,000 for those purposes.
Great, thank you. So if we want to go back, I think to the operating budget is where we actually are, which was page 28 and 30 in tab 7. I've lost my place now going around. We have a couple of operating budgets here. So the on page 28, that budget has now, bottom line has gone from 171,250 to 163,250. And page 30 is 286,16. And then we also had the cemetery budget, which is in 9. So there are 3 budgets, if I'm not mistaken, Audra, to be looking at here and to put a vote on.
Yes, that's correct.
Do we have a motion on?
I just had one quick question. I found the slide really helpful where Beth put out all the different properties that you maintain and the bolded items. Where are all those bolded items in the budget? Are they things that you're going to be doing, or is this sort of where are those, I guess?
So those bolded items was basically we had an ongoing spreadsheet when the Parks and Rec Committee was still meeting prior to COVID. And we would go around and do park tours and make a list of priorities. And those were their priorities that we needed to work on in each of the locations.
Okay. I mean, it just seems like the numbers are really low in grounds maintenance and building maintenance. Are you funding those projects, or
Yeah.
those are just recommendations?
Yeah, those are recommendations, but we do, nick off a few projects every year. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Do we have are there any more questions that are related to the budget specifically, or do we have some motions to come forward? Would anybody like?
On the first recreation budget, I would make a motion that we accept the revised figure of 163,250.
Thank you. Is there a second for that?
I second.
Second, any discussion related to the 163,250? Okay, thank you. We will take a vote on that then.
Robin, can we maybe vote on all three at the same time?
If that's what somebody would like to do.
I'm opposed to doing that. I want to look through this other one's long and it's got things on it I want to look at.
We have a motion before us then for the 163. If Sophie, would you mind if we go ahead and do that?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I thought we were done discussing. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Okay. So 163,250 is what we're voting on. Shelley Butler.
Yes.
Lorna Cummings.
Yes.
Jill Delano.
Yes.
Beth Doan.
Yes.
Lisa Dresser.
Yes.
John French.
Yes.
Nancy Harmon Jenkins.
Yes.
Jim Hurd.
Yes.
Richard Householder.
Yes.
Peter Lindquist.
Yes.
I'm assuming Drew Lyman is not here yet. Robin McIntosh, me, that would be a yes. Lisa Price. Lisa?
Yes.
Yes. Sophie Romano.
Yes.
Andy Scrivenich.
Yes.
Sarah Scrivenich.
Yes.
Tyler Smith, are you here? No. Courtney Sukforth.
Yes.
Okay. Mary Winchell.
Yes.
Pamela Gleason.
Yes.
Okay. If Tyler just came in, Tyler, do you have a vote on that, or do you want to wait until the next one? I don't know if you were part of that discussion. Okay. That motion passed. So the next budget is on page 30. That is Culture and Recreation Parks for 286,610. Do we have a motion, or is there a question on that budget specifically? Lorna?
Yeah, sorry. I just was wondering about the signs. Is the 2,000 going to be enough? It sounded like there were tons of signs that needed work, and I was wondering if that was enough this year, because I know you hadn't used it in other years, so you must have a buildup.
Yeah, so the first 6 that I showed on the slideshow are the ones that need the installation. So that $2,000 is for the installation of the signs. We've already had them made.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plus, I'd like to add that we have carried some money forward from FY20 into FY21. So currently in the sign expense line, we have $6,300 to spend. And if we don't spend it this year, we can always carry it forward to the next year as well.
Thank you. Peter Lindquist?
I move we accept 286,610.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Yes.
Second, Jill. Okay, we will go ahead and vote on that. Another roll call vote. Shelley Butler?
Yes.
Lorna Cummings?
Yes.
Jill Delano?
Yes.
Beth Doan?
Yes.
Lisa Dresser?
Yes.
John French?
Yes.
Nancy Harmon Jenkins?
Yes.
Jim Hurd?
Yes.
Richard Householder?
Yes.
Peter Lindquist?
Yes.
Robin McIntosh, yes. Lisa Price?
Yes.
Sophie Romano?
Yes.
Andy Scrivenich?
Yes.
Sarah Scrivenich?
Yes.
Tyler Smith, are you voting? No. Courtney Sukforth?
Yes.
Mary Winchell?
Yes.
And Pamela Gleason?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to clarify. Tyler, are you here? I thought I heard that you had come into the room, but I don't see you on there. So I'm going to stop calling his name then, unless somebody sees him. So next is the cemetery budget, which was on page 33 in tab 8. And is that the cemetery maintenance part, Audra?
Yes.
And that was part of Beth's, that was a slide in Beth's presentation. Is there more to be said about that, Beth, or open the floor for questions? Peter, you have a question?
No, I just move we accept 60,300.
For a second. Okay, is there any discussion?
I have a quick question. Sorry. I don't know if this goes in with something else. I do know, only because my parents do a lot of stuff in the cemeteries with flags and stuff like that around. They said there was a lot of the brown-tail moth stuff. So I didn't know if that was specifically worked, if I know if it's part of budget at all of trying to clear out the trees from brown-tail moth there, as well as, I know we had talked about it a lot for in-town trees and stuff like that, what we could do for town property, but I didn't know if that had been a discussion for cemetery areas.
So Courtney, we did do quite a few trees in the Mountain View Cemetery last spring. We focused on the trees where people would be either walking or getting, high traffic area is where we focused on the trees in the cemetery. And supposedly the treatment that we did is supposed to be good for 2 seasons. So we'll see what effect it has this year.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor, which has been seconded, and that is the $60,300. If there's no further discussion, we can vote on that. Shelley Butler?
Yes.
Lorna Cummings? Lorna?
Sorry, yes.
Okay, I said I'm looking at this mass up here. Jill Delano?
Yes.
Beth Doan?
Yes.
Lisa Dresser?
Yes.
Yes, okay. John French?
Yes.
Nancy Harmon Jenkins?
Yes.
Jim Hurd?
Yes.
Richard Householder?
Yes.
Peter Lindquist?
Yes.
Robin McIntosh, yes. Lisa Price?
Yes.
Sophie Romana?
Yep.
Andy Scrivenich?
Yes.
Sarah Scrivenich?
Yes.
Tyler Smith is not here. Courtney Sukforth?
Yes.
Mary Winchell?
Yes.
And Pamela Gleason?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Audra Cemetery Association, is that something that we need to do?
No, so that was
There's nothing there.
Yeah, that was the town adding to that trust fund.
Okay.
But it continues to be very healthy, both in terms of the interest and the principal on it, so.
Okay, great. So it looks like we're on to dams on page 32.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
And Holly, wherever you are, there you are. So tab 7, page 32.
Yes, and Dave Bolstridge, who is our wastewater treatment plant superintendent, is also our dam control agent. And so he can answer any questions related to the dams budget.
Any questions on the dam budget, or is there a presentation to talk about what's going on with them? Why the number is what it is?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up
Okay.
to share. There we go. This year, actually, there's not a lot of project work that's going to be done. It's essentially status quo. The dams are in good shape right now. We do know that probably the next 3 or 4 years, we have to do some work to the Seabright Dam on the downstream side of the dam in the spillway. The concrete is in fairly bad shape. But we can wait until FY 24 or 25. We do have some money in the budget for things that might come up during the year. Like last year, we had a couple of holes develop in the berm of the small holes in the Seabright berm. And so we had to buy material to fix that. So really, there's nothing unusual in this budget. It's pretty much status quo.
Are there any questions for Dave on those numbers or on what is happening on the dams?
I have a question. I know I'm sure many of us are, and I'm not sure if it goes in with this one or not, but I've been enjoying Allison's Facebook posts and all of that about getting fish ladders and things. Will any of these be part of that, or is this different than?
So that's a good question. All of the dams that we own along the Maguntacook River have all been included as part of a grant-funded project that we're doing. So the town received a fairly significant grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Fund for coastal resilience planning. And that allowed us to sort of look at all the dams that we own and also the privately owned dams along the Maguntacook River to try to figure out, what's sort of the best way that we can manage them into the future to become more resilient to, inland flooding, because we're experiencing, more significant rain events and more rain in shorter periods of time. And also at the, the mouth of the river where the Montgomery Dam is, it connects to the seawall at Harbor Park. And one of the pictures that Beth showed, that's really being, frequently overtopped and eroded. And we're constantly having to, patch the seawall and the land behind it and fix that. So we received another grant from the Coastal Communities Program to look specifically at the Montgomery Dam and and as it connects to the seawall to try and figure out how do we, reconfigure that area so that it's going to be more resilient to, the impacts of sea level rise and storm surge, as well as increased overland flooding from rain events. So every single dam on the system, to some extent, will need to figure out, better ways of managing them. So 3 of the dams that Dave has on this list that, he's responsible for managing, Seabright and then the east and west dams, those will always be part of the river system. So it's more about, like you were saying, Courtney, things like, fish ladders and fish passage. And also the east and west dam kind of work together as a team to let water out of the lake when levels get too high, or, when we're anticipating a significant rain event. So part of this study is looking at how do we do that, more efficiently and, in a manner that's, it's kind of, Dave is put in a position when there's, really significant rain events or, issues like the storms in 2005 and 2006, where, he's kind of faced with the choice of, trying to balance keeping lake properties from flooding and also not flooding the downtown at the same time. So hopefully this study will help us better identify strategies that'll balance that better and not put Dave in a position where he's, scrambling and panicking during those, intense rain events. So, that was sort of the focus of that work. And I think, once we have some of the recommendations from that study, we'll be coming back in the upcoming years to talk more about, the long-term plan for the dams. But for this year, it's more of just a status quo year while we're doing the planning.
Thank you. That makes sense. I was going to ask too, sort of like as a follow-up, but you kind of answered it already. Like when will we start to put money away for that kind of thing? But I guess we can't do it until we have all of it looked at and have a plan for it. So
Yeah, and in the chat, Licia and Allison, they pointed out there's a bunch of talk series around this topic that are going on, and really good presentations that Allison has done with some of our partners. So anybody who's more interested in the details around all this, I'd really recommend you go and watch those and participate, because that will give you a much more in-depth understanding of all this than, you know, anything that I could explain in like a short presentation.
And I assume those are being taped as well?
Yes. Yep.
So they're accessible. Thank you. Do you want to look at, she's saying they're on the town YouTube channel. Do you want to look at capital around the dams as well at the same time before voting on this? Or do you want to go ahead and vote on this, Audra? How would you like?
So really the only thing in the debt capital contingency would be around the capital reserves. And that is on page 36. And what I've proposed there is $20,000 to the dams reserve.
Okay, thank you.
And related to that would be the river habitat restoration account. 30,000 to that, because that will help with, sort of that long-term planning effort.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other specific questions about the budget? And maybe Dave, you could stop sharing the screen, and then we can, so we can see everybody on there. Great, thank you. Any questions or a motion to proceed with this?
I'll move to accept the town manager's budget of $18,400.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, vote on the dams. Shelley Butler.
Yes.
Lorna Cummings.
Yes.
Jill Delano.
Yes.
Beth Doan.
Yes.
Lisa Dresser.
Yes.
John French.
Yes.
Nancy Harmon Jenkins.
Yes.
Jim Hurd.
Yes, I'm leaving. Good night.
You're not staying for wastewater, Jim.
God bless you all. I love you, but I'm going to go nighty-night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I understand, Johnny. Thank you.
Richard Householder.
Yes.
Peter Lindquist.
Yes.
Drew Lyman, not here. Robin McIntosh, yes. Lisa Price. Lisa, where are you? I've lost you. Oh, there she is. Is that a yes? Okay. Okay. Sophie Romano?
Yep.
Andy Scrivenich?
Yes.
Sarah Scrivenich?
Yes.
Tyler Smith is not here. Courtney Sukforth?
Yes.
Mary Winchell?
Yes.
And Pamela Gleason?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Audra,
I'm sorry, but I do have to leave.
okay, thank you, Nancy.
Same here now. I gotta go too.
All right, thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Just John French, where are you? Okay, all right, Audra, debt service, capital reserves, capital improvements.
Oh, so I was thinking for tonight, Robin, given that we've got the wastewater advisory budget,
Okay,
that that Dave Bolstridge would present that, and we can hold off on the
okay,
capital revenue
great.
reserve.
And
Next.
hopefully you're going to explain what an advisory budget is?
Yes. So before Dave starts, so as I kind of talked about in the very beginning of the budget process, we've got two special revenue funds, one of them being the wastewater treatment plant and the other one being the snow bowl. And they sit outside of the general fund budget. And the philosophy behind them is that the revenues need to cover expenses. And in the case of the wastewater budget, we raise revenues through user rates that are charged to customers who are part of the wastewater system, so who are connected to sewer. And the select board serves in the capacity as the wastewater commissioners. And in that role, they have authority over the budget. So they're ultimately the ones who approve the wastewater budget. It doesn't go to town meeting like the general fund budget. So, you know, the role of the budget committee is advisory in terms of both the wastewater and the snowball budgets. So Dave Bolstridge, who you just heard from about the dams, will also be presenting the wastewater budget to you all tonight. Are you ready, Dave?
Yes. Yep. Got a brief overview of the department to share with you here. This is a unique drones photo of the plant. That is the plant from a bird's eye view. And let's see. Our maintenance responsibilities are, we have 17 miles of wastewater collection system, 17 miles of pipe. We also take care of 7 pump stations. And the treatment plant is a grade 3 treatment plant. We have a grade 3 license from the state of Maine. There's 5 different grades of wastewater treatment plants. And so we're kind of in the middle of that. And the grading is really a couple of things. Difficulty of running is one of the criteria, and then also the flow. And we're licensed to handle 1.21 million gallons a day of water on a monthly basis, monthly average. Things we do for the collection system, we've got a high pressure jetter that we use to clean the pipes routinely, and also a tractor camera we use to inspect the piping as well. Moving on here. Wastewater department personnel, I'm the superintendent, of course. I have a grade 5 operator certification with the state of Maine. I have happen to have a geology degree, of all things, and I've been in the environmental compliance business for many years. Sheldon Maine, who was a Camden native, is the assistant superintendent. He has his grade 3 certification. Sheldon has really runs the laboratory and does a great job doing that. He took that on, and I don't have to worry about the laboratory testing, and so it's been a big help for me. And Sheldon happens to have an associate degree in criminal justice. Dave Moody is the mechanic at the plant. He's a grade 2 operator certification. Dave has been at the plant for this year, it'll be 35 years. So he's been a dedicated employee to the wastewater treatment plant, and he's the guy to go to for all the institutional knowledge at the plant. So Mike Weed is a press operator and system mechanic. He also has worked for the town for many years, I think right around 30. And of course, they're both natives as well here. Devin Fuller is an operator. He's our youngest member. He has just recently passed the grade 2 operation certification test. And Devin, with the coronavirus issue we've had, we've split the crew up to make sure that there's somebody left to run the operation. And Devin's done a great job of stepping up and helping with the laboratory testing. Jeff Dawzel, he's the our newest member. He is a senior operator. He's got the certification as well. And he's worked for many years in the wastewater and the water fields with a lot of mechanical and electrical experience. So we're glad to have him aboard here. And that's it for an overview. Go ahead and bring up the budget. Ah, there it is. Okay, the first page is the salaries and the insurance payments, that type of thing. That and we have really tried this year to not raise the budget lines if we could. So there's very little. There's less than a 1% increase in this section.
Can I just interrupt for a second, Audra or Dave? This wasn't on the agenda as being a page number in our book. Is there a place where we can access this in our book?
So I believe Janice emailed you copies of this budget.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was emailed as a PDF.
Just yesterday, actually. Yesterday.
Okay, my apologies.
Oh, no worries.
Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Yep, okay. And nope, the like I say, the lines are pretty much all the same as last year. Dave Moody, with its 35th anniversary, has a little bit of a bump in pay. And that's really, I believe, the only reason for the slight increase in this section. So if we're all set there, we'll go to the.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
Just wondering about, I saw there was a line for legal fees, and I was just wondering if the lawyer for the town covers the snowball and the wastewater, or if that's just separate things that he wouldn't do and that kind of thing.
No, the Bill does our legal. He's our legal counsel as well. And right now we're working on easements for the new force main that we're going to put in, and he's been doing a lot of work for me.
Okay.
So the wastewater treatment plant reimburses the general fund for that portion of Bill's wages and benefits.
Okay. Thanks.
And moving on to the plant and the collection system, we've got a lot of one of these lines are routine things like electrical, chemical, heating oil. Then we have some maintenance lines, that things come up we don't anticipate. We've got some money to handle that. Laboratory services, we do use some outside labs to do some of the testing. We do the basic testing, but we don't really do enough for the more exotic testing to justify having the equipment. So what we do, we send that to a commercial lab in Yarmouth to do that. And another item that's gone up over the years is the sludge removal. All our biosolids go out to Unity, and they're composted and used. They're spread there for a soil amendment. And I will note that the new piece of equipment we're putting in for the upgrade will greatly reduce the amount of water that we end up sending across the road. And it looks to me like we'll probably reduce our loads by about 16 loads per year. So that'll be a good cost savings. See, is there any questions on this section or?
I have another
All right.
question. I'm so sorry.
All right.
It's not really budget related, so maybe I shouldn't even ask it, but the whole sludge thing I was wondering about that because it's really been in the news about these forever chemicals getting spread on fields and stuff like that. So I was wondering how that gets into sludge and if our sludge gets tested before it's removed or how that works.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Those chemicals are found in plastics. They're found in fabrics. They're found in things like shampoo, makeup. They're pretty pervasive. They've been used for a long time. I don't know if you remember when the nonstick pans first came out, or I do anyway. You probably don't. But you know, for decades we've used those chemicals. You know, things like Scotchgard has that in there. And fire departments, their liquids they use to suppress fires are also in that group of chemicals. So we're still allowed to land spread our material. Is tested all the time. There is some in it, but it's no more than the current background. Like you say, that it's been used for many, many years, and it's pretty much pervasive in our environment. They're looking at other chemicals to replace what's referred to as PFAS is one of the compounds. And the only issue is we got to make sure that the replacement isn't worse than these chemicals that we're using now. So did I answer your question?
Sort of, yeah, you did for the most part. So, but basically it's in the waste. It's not something you're adding or that waste departments add to the sludge. But you do test to see the levels aren't too high before it goes. That's what I heard you say.
Yes, yes, yeah. That we don't add any. That just comes into the plant.
Sophie, you have a question as well?
I do. Dave, I'm looking at your FY20 budget, and you came significantly under budget by $54,000. Can you explain that? And it's not the first time, and I remember asking the same question last year. And the reason why I'm asking this question is because the budget you submit, if I remember correctly, affects the rate that users are charged. But when you come under budget, that rate doesn't change back. The underspend in your budget gets pushed into your reserves, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So $54,000 is a big underspend.
Yeah. You know, we have to plan. We try to put enough money in the budget for any unexpected breakdowns. You know, for example, the Bayview pump station, the pumps are 105 horsepower pumps. We have 3 of them. If one of those should fail during the year and we had to replace it, you're looking at $50,000-$60,000 to replace that. So we really have to budget enough to make sure that we can cover any unexpected repairs during the year.
Sure, but so how much is your reserve right now?
Well, we can go down and have a look at that. I'm going to skip ahead here. These are the reserve lines. You see we add to them. See a little further. Okay, right here on bottom of page 6, it shows the year-end balances of those lines. Now, so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. We've been putting money away for upgrades as well, to help with the debt service. And I don't know if we want to talk about that right now, or if Jody wants to kind of explain that probably a little bit better than I can.
Yeah, that's probably the most important thing for everyone to look at, because it's where the majority of the increase in this year's budget comes from, is for the upgrade reserve. So Jody, do you want to just kind of explain?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So in order for us to prepare for the first year of the bond payment that will be for the entire upgrade, we have taken for the next, and I should probably bring up that spreadsheet. For the next 3 or 4 years, we wanted to build up a reserve that would affect the user rate, so that when it comes time for us to make that $600,000 bond payment, that the user rate doesn't jump from, that the budget itself doesn't jump $600,000. So this year, we are proposing to add $450,000 to the reserve. We started this back in FY20 with $100,000. And this current year, we added $200,000 to it. Then for FY22, $450,000, so that we can gradually get up to that bond payment.
Sophie, do you have a question on that?
No, I'm just.
Your hand is up.
No, I'm sorry. That was my initial question.
Okay.
And, just pointing out, for example, the collection system I&I reserves are up to 205,000 now. It would be very easy to expend that money fairly quickly, because, a liner job, normally when you line pipe, you're looking at $30,000 to $100,000, depending how much line that you line. If you go in and change out pipe, we're looking at Pearl Street, for example, and just part of Pearl would be about a $200,000 project. So it looks like, a fair amount of money there, but unfortunately, things are in this business are expensive. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, is there anything else we need on that, Audra or Dave?
Those are sort of the big changes this year.
Questions from the committee?
I have a question.
Yeah, Jill.
This may sound very naive. So when I make my payment for my wastewater bill, it's to Maine Water. I don't understand. So our town runs this, but what's the relationship with Maine Water? Just in a nutshell, just for people that have no clue like me.
No, that's a great question. So the town contracts with Maine Water to do all of our wastewater billing.
Billing, okay.
Yeah, I believe we used to do it all in. I'm sorry, I might be mixing us up with Rockland because it's the same there. But I believe we used to do it all in-house here too, and it's just a really big endeavor. I think it was like almost a full position dedicated just to doing the billing. So
yeah, I think Marlene used to actually do it.
Yeah, I think she did too.
So is that a line item somewhere on here?
Yes, that was in the first page, I believe.
Yep, it's billing service under administration, and we're proposing $34,000 for billing.
I see.
Right on the bottom line here.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Audra, is there, and Dave, is there more? Are we?
Nope, that's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the overview.
Dave, one of the questions that came up last week, I can't remember how we ended up on sewage treatment, but was, and I just wanted to reiterate, people were asking about going over and touring the facility, and I highly recommend it. The budget committee did it a couple of years ago on probably the coldest night of the entire winter. It was
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
brutal being over there. I would suggest doing it at a different time of year so you can actually see what's going on. But
Well, who knows? I mean, next year it might be right in the middle of the construction, so that'd be kind of interesting.
it's in my backyard.
Pretty congested down there right now. We've broken ground at the plant, so yeah, we'll have to go at a time where it's not quite so congested with equipment, construction equipment. But
Yeah, so I guess another, Dave's had a huge year. You know, we've got the C Street Force Main, which is a really big project, and that's starting up the 1st of April. So that's replacing the force main that runs under the harbor currently from the C Street pump station to the Bayview pump station. We can't replace that pipe where it is anymore because we're not allowed to, well, I mean, the requirements to run a utility like that under a harbor are so cumbersome that you're basically not allowed to do it anymore. And with the harbor the way it is, we'd never be able to afford to, you know, sort of replace that pipe in that location. So we had to run it overland. So now it's going to go from C Street down Atlantic Avenue, down Main Street to down Commercial Street to the pump station, which is on the public landing now. So luckily, they were able to sort of use a lot of existing pipe that we had just relined on Main Street. So it won't be too incredibly disruptive to Main Street Camden, but you know, it's certainly something that we're trying to, you know, reduce the impact of that construction on the library and other, you know, other people who are on Atlantic Avenue. But that's a huge project, and it's one of the it's gonna be really beneficial to not have that pipe running under the harbor anymore, and have a new infrastructure there. So that's going on next week, and like Dave said, they've broken ground on the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and that's a $13.9 million project. So, you know, I can't stress how busy Dave has been in, you know, coordinating that over the past year and getting it to a point where it's, you know, we're ready to get going on it. So he's just been incredibly busy over the past year, and he's had a lot of really big projects to, you know, to be working on and coordinating on top of, you know, the day-to-day operations of the plant and making sure that we don't flood the town with the dam. So that's
it's good. We got a little. It's good we have a little hiatus here with the dams. I don't have any big projects over the next. I hope I don't over the next 2 years anyway, and so that'll help me concentrate on the wastewater upgrade. So.
Good. Well, thank you. Audra, is there anything else for this evening, or you were going to say the debt capital tab 9 until next week?
Yes.
Yeah?
I did want to point out though, so if you go to the capital improvement program under tab 9, and I believe it's sheet 37, there is a line at the very bottom, and it's a loan to the wastewater department from the general fund. So to explain what that's for, so that, you know, everybody knows when we kind of finalize that budget next week, the town of, we're sort of covering the upfront cost of the town of Rockport's contribution to the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. And we were able to use all of the, or a lot of the wastewater reserve funds to cover that cost. but we also needed to sort of make up that difference through a loan from the general fund to the wastewater department. So that'll be money that's coming from the unassigned fund balance or the surplus, and it will be paid back by the town of Rockport over time to both the wastewater department and the general fund. So just pointing that out tonight so that you're all aware of it when we talk about it next week.
Thank you. Okay. Dave, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And there's no more votes required for this evening. And so I gather we can entertain a motion to adjourn, correct, Audra?
Yes.
So moved.
So moved, seconded.
Yep.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
That
you,
was a
everybody.